Thousands of years ago, there was a prophecy that one day a video game company would rise and give birth to a number of iconic franchises and pieces of technology. For the past 20 years, the false prophets have tried to tell us that it was PlayStation that was this company that was paving the way into the glorious future where mature gamers would play mature games geared towards adults. They would play Gears of War and then mash square to gangbang a bunch of chicks in God of War. Like, they were like mature adult games, you know. PlayStation was supposed to be the one. But as we've learned, as we've studied the scriptures, and as we've seen how things played out, it has become incredibly obvious that it was Nintendo that was the chosen one. PlayStation was nothing but a false savior. And that's becoming more and more apparent all the time. Like, every year, it feels like we see more and more copes from the gaming community in regards to this situation. You know, whether it's downplaying the longstanding success or popularity of the Nintendo 64 or attacking new Nintendo hardware. It was not a surprise to anyone, really, that the Nintendo Switch 2 did well. Right? Anybody who seriously thought this thing was going to bomb because of the price was completely delusional. It was just so completely out of touch with reality. It was downright laughable. And we're seeing like a number of like prominent YouTubers like Mutahar or Side Scrollers or like a lot of these people who were like, you know, adamant that like, oh, I'm never going to buy a Switch 2. It's just too expensive. Keep in mind, these guys are millionaires. These guys were prattling on about how they would never support the Switch 2, how it was too expensive, how Nintendo was scamming its audience, and they all go out and get one, you know. Like, they can't even do that age-old cope of like, well, I'm just going to emulate the games on my PC because you can't do that. It's just been, like, this amazing kind of, like, house of cards just kind of collapsing. You know, the narrative has always been that Nintendo was becoming increasingly unpopular all the time and that, like, everyone hates them. But the reality is so different that it really needs to be studied. It really needs to be, like, a Harmon Smith University kind of, like, you know, like doctorate program where like we just study these people and like the copes they go to try and gaslight themselves into thinking that PlayStation or PC is in any way competitive with Nintendo hardware, right? You're seeing a lot of these guys getting hyped up for the Xbox handheld, right? And we all know how that's going to end. You know, it's going to be like a complete and total L for Xbox. You know, the PlayStation Portal isn't doing numbers. Oh, wait a minute. The gaming community is trying to gaslight you into thinking it's doing well. You know, like I do think this is like the major takeaway we need to have, you know, when it comes to like the success of the Nintendo Switch 2 and like the attitude of like every analyst out there, whether it's like Sean Malmstrom or Angry Joe or like Pactor or like the Zoogie X guy or like, you know, whoever else, you know, like the reality is these guys always glaze whatever PlayStation does while downplaying Nintendo. A really good example of that actually is Stellar Blade, right? Because you're seeing a lot of these guys come out and say like, oh, Stellar Blade is a huge success story. It sold like 3 million units on PC. Like, oh, like it's such a big deal. It's the biggest PlayStation game on PC ever. Oh, like they try to make this like out to be some major success story when like meanwhile, like the Nintendo Switch 2 exists and has been like doing really big numbers. Like, you know, like Mario Kart World has already outsold that. So like, again, like people like Grummz are sitting there like, you know, trying to say that like, oh man, like Arkham Knight looks like a PS1 game. Like they say it's like Arkham Knight and they're showing images of like that PS1 Batman game that exists. Like, they're constantly like railing on the Switch 2, complaining about it, saying Mario Kart isn't on par with other franchises, that it's not worth the $80. But like the reality is, Mario Kart World is quite a bit better than actually a lot better than like any of the games they glaze, whether it's like Expedition 33 or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring. Like Mario Kart like clears all of that like combined. You know, it's so much better than like every like establishment game they try to push. And Stellar Blade is no different. And like considering this game is already old news, and I've already talked extensively about how the game doesn't really live up to its hype and stuff like that. Like it really is just an embarrassing kind of like hype cycle where like the community is rallying to try and give like some credibility to some like up and coming Korean studio because we all know not to trust like established PlayStation developers, but like people like have high hopes for Shift Up, they have high hopes for Arrowhead. They always do this when it comes to these like smaller companies that haven't screwed up yet. Like they always just glaze them and act like they're some huge hotshot deal, but like the reality is just very, very, very different. Stellar Blade already had like one major controversy with the censorship debacle. And honestly, like I think that was probably just a long-term publicity stunt, just so they could sell you on the PC version. It's just it's very sad and pathetic to see, and I really wish that more people would call this out for what it was. But it does feel like this is going to continue for the foreseeable future, where like game journals are just going to glaze every minor release on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, while like straight up ignoring or even mocking major Nintendo releases. Like how many times have we seen these people say over the past couple of weeks that like the Switch 2 has no games, and then meanwhile you have people like me like streaming the console every night. I have like over 10 hours in basically everything I bought day one. Mario Kart World, Street Fighter 6, well, not Cyberpunk. Like Fantasy Life 2, like I've been playing a lot of games on that thing. It's like I've been really enjoying my Switch too. So like the idea that there's still people out there like trying to say the console isn't like worth it, or that it's not a good deal, that it's overpriced, and that it's not quality hardware, it's just a gigantic hope. And the inverse, like the on the other side of the coin, like you have them glazing mediocre games that like nobody is gonna remember like a year from now. Like it's kind of remarkable seeing how quickly like Black Myth Wukong or Baldur's Gate 3 fell off. Elden Ring, Night Rain. But like now you have stuff like Stellar Blade PC. People are glazing like the sales numbers and the mods, but you're curiously not seeing anyone talk about the actual game. That's kind of my thing with this game. Like, well, the girl is hot on it, but like, okay, but I talk to real women. Like I don't buy games based on how hot the protagonist is. Like, imagine if you were like, oh, well, I can't play Metroid because Samus doesn't show enough skin in it. Like Nintendo censored it. Like I know people who did that for Zero Mission. Or did the opposite and say like the Zero Suit was somehow more sexualized in the bikini. I remember like people doing that back in the day, and like that's like a really good example of what I'm talking about. How like nobody like nothing burger characters like Lara Croft or like the Beyond Good and Evil chick Jade like get glazed and worshipped, and like meanwhile in reality like superior female Nintendo characters are like being introduced all the time. Whether it's like Toadette or Edelgard von Helsfrog or like there are just dozens and dozens examples of just like really popular like female Nintendo characters that have like become huge over the past couple of years. Pauline is a really good example. Right now, people are getting fired up about her possible appearance in Bonanza. So that's something really interesting that like you won't see these people acknowledge, is that like Nintendo actually treats its female leads like actual characters, instead of just like, oh man, how hot is she, bro? Like it's just like, come on, like have some perspective, have some class, like understand like what really makes a character great. And I do think that like the Stellar Blade Glazers, they really don't have the slightest clue as to like what makes a good female lead, because like anybody who's being honest with themselves would tell you that like Bayonetta was better, that Princess Peach Showtime was better. Like there's just dozens of examples of like this kind of thing done better, and unfortunately the vast majority of the community don't want to admit it to themselves. They want to downplay every major Nintendo game that comes out, and constantly want to like pretend as if PC is like getting like all of these amazing games. but like it's just not happening. It's gonna be really remarkable seeing something like Baldur's Gate 3 get ported to Switch 2 and nobody care. Like we saw that with Deltarune actually. Toby Fox made this big deal about like, oh, we're gonna put Deltarune on Nintendo consoles, and he did this thing, and like nobody cares. It's like one of those games that absolutely nobody is talking about right now, even after like that trailer and the Nintendo. Like it's so crazy to see. But like that's just one example of what I'm talking about, of just how out of touch these people actually are. Like they won't admit that their games are not standing up to Nintendo exclusives. They do not look or play as good as the Nintendo exclusives, and the Nintendo console is a better value than all of their preferred platforms, like not just PlayStation and Xbox, but the high-end gaming PCs and the mobile devices as well. Like, and again, like you do see this very stubborn refusal to acknowledge it, but it does need to be brought up more often, is that like these people are completely disrespecting Nintendo near constantly and need to be called out for it.